Is this better? Do I not
Yes.
sound so far away anymore?
Yeah,
Okay,
perfect. Thank you, David.
No worries.
Hi, Percy. Attendees, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. The chat is open and we'll try to answer them. Hi, Nadia.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. We're really excited to have you join us today for this session. This initiative is actually part of UNDRR initiative to celebrate International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction on October 30th, which will be under the theme of empowering the next generation for a resilient future. So this training session is a joint effort, as I said, by UNDRR African Office, Stakeholders Engagement Mechanism, and also AYAB, to fill actually the knowledge gap we found among young people about disaster risk reduction. And this is also your chance to gain the insights that you will need to excel in our upcoming DRR art competition. And yes, we are organizing a DRR art competition, and you will know more about it later. Also, special thanks and welcome to all our panelists. Your expertise and insights will be very invaluable to our participants. And thank you also for taking the time on such a short notice to share your knowledge with us today. So here's what we will cover today. We will start actually with an introduction to the main DRR concepts. It will be covered by our colleague Justin from UNDRR. Then we will have a presentation of the International Disaster Risk Day and also the theme. And after that, we will have a presentation of the comprehensive school safety framework, which will be covered by Nadia Zaidi, the Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the education sector. And then we will have a short Q&A session with me again. And after that, we will have a comprehensive risk management by David from UNDRR. And later on, we will have a session about youth and education and disaster risk reduction. Then it will be covered by actually Percy, which will give us actually a background of IFRS DRR activities in the region with the focus on school-based DRR. Then we will have youth commitment within the African region by Amin from the Red Cross. We'll have also the time to have a presentation about the Kenyan Red Cross experience, which will be covered by Peter. And then the Mauritius Red Cross experience, which will be covered by Naven. And then we will get back to Terry and talk about art and DRR, and we will announce the art competition. And then we will have a small Q&A session to hear about your question about the DRR art competition. So yeah, we encourage you all to jump in and share your thoughts and ideas throughout the session. You can use the chat box, and we will make actually this more engaging webinar and help you answer all your questions. So thanks for being here, and let's get started. Over to you, Justin.
Thank you very much, Asna. I'm going to try to share my screen now and start this first presentation on disaster risk reduction to introduce the main concepts. Okay, there. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
But we
perfect.
can see your presentation mode.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, a minute.
Display settings, maybe? I'm not sure.
Okay, sorry. What about now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon for the others. Thank you for being with us today. So I'll start with a short presentation about the main concept around disaster risk reduction, and then continue with presenting the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction theme. So to start, I would like to show you this short presentation about UNDRR, UN Disaster Risk Reduction Office for disaster risk reduction. That is the organization I'm working with, and that will introduce the main key theme and concept around disaster risk reduction. All right.
Every year, disasters destroy more lives and livelihoods, undermining development and locking people into poverty. But despite the scale of the threat, funding for disaster risk reduction lags way behind. Between 2010 and 2019, only 4.1% of disaster-related funding was spent on prevention and preparedness. Simply put, risk creation massively outstrips risk reduction. But it doesn't have to be like this. We aim to break the cycle of disaster, response, recovery, repeat. How? By switching the focus from managing disasters to managing risk. And it's a method that pays. Every dollar spent reducing risk can save 15 in post-disaster recovery costs. UNDRR delivers positive change by helping countries and communities make better decisions about risk. We collect and analyze the latest risk data and information. We support the rollout of inclusive multi-hazard early warning systems. We work with countries to embed risk reduction across all areas of governance, because risk is everyone's business. We bring together partners, experts, country and community leaders to share experiences and expertise. UNDRR works towards a safe and sustainable world.
So thank you. So to dive deep into the topic, we must know what we mean by disasters. So according to the International Federation of the Red Cross, disasters are serious disruption to the functioning of a community that exceeds its capacity to cope using its own resources. So disasters have increased these past years. Indeed, the world has experienced 350 to 500 medium to large scale disaster per year over the last 20 years. This is 5 times higher than the previous 3 decades. And this trend is continuing, having disaster impacts, including direct economic loss. As you can see, over the between 1989 and 2020, the economic loss from disaster has tremendously increased. So this trend is continuing, and that's why we at UNDRR and all our partners are trying to raise awareness around this issue. But to better understand disaster risk reduction, we have to understand what is disaster risk. So disaster risk is the potential loss of life, injury, or destroyed or damaged assets which could occur to a system, a society, or a community in a specific period of time. And the disaster risk is determined probabilistically as a function of hazards, vulnerability, exposure. And these three main factors are what are determining disaster risk. So to be clearer, what is a hazard? A hazard is a process, a phenomenon, or human activity that may cause loss of life, injury, property damage, or environmental degradation. For example, on our example here, heavy rainfall can be a hazard. Then vulnerability is the condition determined by physical, social, economic, and environmental factors or processes which increase the susceptibility of an individual, a community, assets, or system to the impact of hazards. So here it's the condition of the people or the assets that are around the river that we see. And finally, the last criteria is exposure, which is the situation of the people, infrastructure, housing, production capacity, and other tangible human assets located in hazard-prone areas. And to measure this exposure, for example, we can understand how many people are living in our example on the shores on the banks of this river. So the risk of disasters increases as the frequency of the severity of hazards, as the people vulnerability increases, or the capacity to cope with the hazard. So all these elements give the disaster risk. So another important point is the term natural disasters. So we often hear about natural disasters in the media, in the government speeches, but actually it's very important to remember and to understand that there is no such thing as a natural disaster. There is only natural hazards. For example, if an earthquake happens, it will only be a disaster depending on where it happens, when it happens, and the capacity of the people that may be impacted or not to cope with this earthquake. So if the earthquake happen in a place where no one lives, this will not be a disaster. It will just be a natural hazard. But if it happens in and impact a city, it will be a disaster if the city has not been built to resist earthquakes, if the buildings don't have the necessary norms to resist earthquakes. So we make choices as to where we inhabit and how we build, and these choices will actually determine the consequences of a disaster. So disasters are the consequences of human decision, and they are not natural. Hazards are natural. Disasters are the consequences of human decision. So now that we know what is disaster risk and that disasters are not natural, what is disaster risk reduction? Disaster risk reduction is prevent new and reduce existing disasters, a disaster risk, and manage residual risk by strengthening the resilience of people, systems, and approaches. So for example, in the previous example that I was explaining, it will be prevent a disaster will be to build, taking into account the probability of earthquake in the region you're building in, and building in consequence with adequate norm. I want to stop a second on what is residual risk. Residual risk is the disaster risk that remains even when effective disaster risk reduction measures are in place. We can't avoid every risk of disaster, sorry. So knowing that, we still need to plan for emergency response and recovery capacities to be sure we are covering the residual risk. So what we are trying to do as UNDRR and with all the partners we are working with and all the actors that are working actively on disaster risk reduction is to break this cycle, this vicious cycle of disaster, response, recovery, repeat. Often when a natural hazard happen and that it causes a disaster, there is a humanitarian response effectively after it, but sometimes these natural hazards are happening often in the same place, and if we just continue to react to this disaster once the disaster happen, we are not finding long-term solution, and we are not breaking this cycle. So to break this cycle, we are switching the focus from managing disasters, so reacting to them, to managing risk, so anticipating the risk, understanding the risk, and preventing disasters to happen. So finally, the main framework for disaster risk reduction is the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030, which is a roadmap for how we make our communities safer and more resilient. It's the first major agreement of the post-2015 development agenda, and it provides member states with concrete actions to protect development gains from the risk of disaster. So it advocates for the substantial reduction of disaster risk and all the consequences that goes with disaster, so losses in life, livelihoods and health, and economic, physical, social, cultural, or environmental assets of persons. And the 4 priorities of this framework are understanding disaster risk. The second priority is strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk. Then it's investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience. And finally, it's enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response and to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. So this is a brief presentation of the main concept of disaster risk reduction and the main framework that lays out the roadmap to make the world more resilient. But if you want to know more about UNDRR and disaster risk reduction, here are a list of resources that we'll share by email after this webinar. So that's all for my first part. Now that you have the main concept about disaster risk reduction, I want to introduce the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction 2024 and its theme. So the theme of this year is empowering the next generation for a resilient future. And International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction is happening every year on the 13th of October. And it's a day to gather people and raise awareness around disaster risk reduction. And we are generally, we are building a campaign and choosing a theme to every year to target one special aspect of disaster risk reduction. So this year, as I was saying, it's around education and youth and empowering children. So I would like to ask you for a minute in the chat to propose your answer to why do you think we chose this theme? And what is important, according to you, regarding education, children, and disaster risk reduction? So I think I can't see the chat. So Asna will ask for your help. If you can just have a look at the chat and give me a few answers to the question, why did we choose to talk about children, education, and youth in relation to disaster risk reduction this year, and why the audience think it's important. You can write your answers in the chat.
I think I can see some answers.
Please go ahead.
Someone said awareness.
Yeah. Do you have any others?
Don't be shy, guys.
I think because the chat box is disabled, so they can only use the Q&A box. So yeah, please feel free to use that box. Okay, I think it's pertinent to talk about education and youth for this year DRR because of their level of vulnerability and their role.
Okay.
So, someone else said that it's the next generation, so it's normal. Another person said vulnerability. So there is the word vulnerability that comes a lot. We have another response. I think the theme on the topic is important since learning or getting early knowledge on how to manage disaster can build a more resilient future. Another answer, because DRR requires collective action. Another one, children are among the vulnerable population, and informing them in a way of building resilience and empowers them at an early age and serves as a long-term approach.
Thank you very much, Asna. I'm going to have to stop here because we have a long session ahead of us, but thank you very much. And all these answers are actually very true and makes a lot of sense. So I listed also some of them. Yes. So indeed, I heard the word vulnerability come out a lot, and it's true. Children have specific vulnerability, and sometimes they don't have, and often they don't have the same ability as adults to cope with situations. Also, I would like to say that according to UNICEF, approximately 1 billion children worldwide are at an extremely high risk due to climate impacts or including climate-related disasters. So disasters are growing and they impact the well-being of children and youth. While child and youth deserve to be protected from disaster and especially at school. That's why it's also a specific focus on this year's theme. And also children face specific cascading impacts. For example, after a disaster happen, there could be a school schools that are impacted and destroyed, and children are not able to access education anymore for a more or less long period of time. So this specific situation of children, it's also it's the first thing we have to understand to build plans, DR policies that are taking into account their specific needs. But also, and that was something that came out of the midterm review of the Sendai framework, that we call for full, equal, meaningful, and inclusive participation of youth and a whole of society approach. So everyone needs to be able to participate in disaster risk reduction. And education, as people mentioned, it's also really particular time, especially school education, to learn new skills and learn about disaster risk reduction in this specific environment. So it's an opportunity for the disaster risk reduction community to raise awareness on the topic. And finally, there is a Summit of the Future happening at the end of the year, and the youth is one of the 5 pillars of this Summit of the Future. So 2 key areas or 2 key messages we want to send with this campaign of IDDRR 2024 is first, protect children and youth through safe schools and education facilities. So children are entitled to be safe in their schools, and this starts with ensuring that schools are actually disaster resilient and are part of disaster early warning systems. And secondly, empower children and youth to understand and act on the risks they face. This includes building their preparedness to take early action in response to early warnings. And finally, the last important point is we are calling on states to endorse and implement the comprehensive school safety framework. But my colleague Nadia will talk about it more in depth just after. So finally, this is a campaign, and we need you, and we need all the people to participate in it. So to do that, we encourage you to inform yourself on disaster risk reduction and on specific aspects linked to schools and education, to participate or organize events linked to disaster risk reduction and raising awareness and education. And finally, you can also share on social media, broadcast our events and the events on this topic, and call on your government to act and to take into account children's specific needs. We have many resources online, and this is a screenshot that you can see on the screen of our website on International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, and you can just access it freely and use all the resources to build campaigns and to participate in this IDDRR 2024. Thank you very much, everyone. At the end of my presentation, and I'll now pass the mic to Nadia to talk about comprehensive school safety framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justine. I will go ahead and share my screen. I apologize, I'll stay off camera so that I make the presentation. I have a very tricky internet today. So I hope you can hear me clearly and see my screen clearly. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but a bit blurred, but it should be okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, now is it now can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just be a little louder, so I hope that helps. So thank you, UNDRR Africa Office of SEM, AYAB, for organizing this DRR training session, specially designed to introduce the young people of today to essential DRR concepts. It's a very important undertaking. To quickly introduce myself, I'm Nadia, currently here in the capacity of a chair of GADRRRES Working Group on Advocacy. The other co-chairs are my colleagues at UNICEF, Maya Socrates and Anya from Save the Children UK. We work across different time zones, so we're based out of US, Greece, UK, and India. And so there's a lot of collaborative work happening between the co-chairs advocating for GADRRRRES. Welcome to the introduction to GADRRRRES, Global Alliance for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in the Education Sector. Children and youth, that is youth, have the right to safety, security, and protection in schools, to educational continuity, and to participate in decisions that affect their future. Past few years have revealed growing threats from both the expected and the unexpected impacts of climate change, violence and conflict, and health hazards. Let's look at some of these impacts. Over 11 million children's education was disrupted between 2000 and 2019 by at least 16 major disasters affecting 30 countries. 224 million crisis-impacted children are in urgent need of quality education, a result of armed conflict, forced displacement, the climate crisis, and other disasters. And as Justine also highlighted earlier, 1 billion children, that's nearly half the world's children, live in extremely high-risk countries to the impact of climate crisis with serious consequences to their education. And this is why disaster risk reduction and resilience is important, because every child has a right to quality education. Disasters are growing and it's impacting the well-being of children and youth and their access to quality education. And without preparedness, resilience, continued shocks and stresses threaten to intensify an already staggering global education crisis. Millions of children's future are at peril here. Education continuity in such times of crisis is vital for children's learning and well-being, as schools have the critical role to play in promoting a culture of safety, inclusion, well-being, including disaster prevention from all hazards, and empowering young people such as you to understand and act on these risks that you face. I'm sure all the young attendees are already asking the question, what is GADRRRES? GADRRRES was established in 2013 to provide a comprehensive approach to school safety. It's an alliance of organizations that believes that every child has the right to learn in a safe environment. We work together to make this a reality. It's a multi-stakeholder alliance that is composed of UN agencies, international NGOs, humanitarian development organizations, and network youth organizations, donors, multilateral funds, and other private sectors that work together to advocate for and support child rights, resilience, and sustainability in the education sector across the humanitarian, development, and peace nexus. In addition, the global network also has 3 affiliates, the Latin American and Caribbean, West and Central Africa, Asia Pacific. There are 21 GADRRRES members, and we are guided by the Comprehensive School Safety Framework, the CSSF. The goal of CSSF is to strengthen the resilience of education systems, support education continuity, and provide children with the skills, knowledge, and behavior to prepare for and respond to all shocks and stresses. So how does CSSF achieve this? To promote safe and equitable and continuous access to quality education for all, CSSF provides a strategic guidance to duty bearers and their partners. Usually it's difficult to have separate plans and processes to address all the different threats to child rights and resilience. So CSSF has undertaken an all rights, all risk approach to protecting children and education. And it offers governments a practical framework to advance the children's rights, disaster risk reduction, peace building, climate action, and sustainable development agenda. The framework covers hazards and risks under the 4 umbrellas, that is natural and climate change induced, technological, biological and health, conflict and violence, and everyday threats. The framework also ensures that it's aligned with the human rights principles, the Zaidi framework, as Justine had just mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goals and Paris Agreement on climate change. And so it's very important to understand what the key components of CSSF are. As you can see from the infographic, composes of 4 key components that includes a cross-cutting foundation and 3 intersecting pillars, as you can see from the circles above. The foundation is the enabling system and policies, which focuses on strengthening system-level resilience. And then there are 3 intersecting pillars. The first one being safer learning facilities, which addresses both new and existing school facilities, and includes building safer and greener facilities. The pillar 2 is the school safety and educational continuity management. It addresses the equity-focused planning for children's health, safety, and well-being for education continuity, especially in relation to any hazards and risks to children and staff. And the third one is the risk reduction and resilience education, very much important in today's discussion. It develops individual and community understanding and capacity to assess all hazards and risks. So it addresses school safety through different educational activities and systems. And that would include education for sustainable development, child-centered learning, formal curriculum, teacher training and staff development, extracurricular and community-based informal education that would include youth involvement and children as well. So GADRRRES calls on all governments to endorse, implement, report on, and champion the CSSF. And what endorsement really means here is that the countries share GADRRRES' vision that every school in every country should be a safe school. And therefore, it's committing to the 3 goals of CSSF that I had mentioned earlier. Till date, we have 70 countries that have endorsed the CSSF, and feel free to browse through those countries on the GADRRRES website. And they're setting out their commitment to comprehensive school safety. Having said this, the most important aspect of CSSF is that it considers children as participants and agents of change. Children and youth, that is you, are the right holders and primary beneficiaries of all the work that duty bearers do for sustainable development, disaster, climate, and conflict risk reduction. And it is imperative for you to know that you are already active contributors to risk reduction, peace building, and climate action. There is certainly much more that can be done to engage you fully as participants in these processes, and we are, as GADRRRES, working towards it. For more information, please feel free to explore the resources that I will be sharing after the completion of the webinar, and also feel free to browse through the GADRRRRES website to learn more about the tools that reside within that space, especially the ones that would include more child-centered, youth-centered participation as well. And I'll wrap up now, and thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful and we've learned something new. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadia, for the presentation. I think now we can open up the Q&A session, maybe for a bit, just to see if you have any questions for Nadia or for Justin. Please feel free to share them with us. You can use the Q&A box.
Normally, I also open the chat now,
Okay.
but maybe Q&A, it's easier.
I think we don't have questions.
I don't think so either.
So maybe we can move to the...
Oh, there is a question.
Yes. I have a question. I saw that will be applied another survey related to CSS as applied in 2017. Do you have the list of the countries who will answer it?
That's for Nadia.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? Sorry, I wasn't able to hear it clearly.
I have a question. I saw that will be applied another survey related to CSS as applied in 2017. Do you have the list of the countries who will answer it?
We're currently in the process of conducting the survey. The list of countries will become available once we have the results. We're hoping to get the results for the policy survey by the end of this year. And so hopefully that should give us an idea as to how the countries are implementing it, and performance to be done. I hope that's helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think I have another question to Justin. Can you explain the difference between disaster management and risk management?
Hi, yes, sure. So disaster management, it's when a disaster happen. So for example, heavy rainfall, floods, people are impacted, houses are impacted, people have to have their assets destroyed. That's when you generally have a humanitarian response afterwards, where humanitarian workers are helping people to evacuate, for example. While risk management, it's understanding the risk, evaluating the risk of a disaster happening. So considering the vulnerability, the exposure, and the hazards that are susceptible to happen in a specific zone. And then planning for measures to prevent, mitigate, and mitigate this risk. So for example, if you're living in an area that is prone to earthquake, you're gonna prevent a disaster happening by building buildings that are resistant to earthquakes. So if an earthquake happen in this zone, your building won't collapse. Normally they will resist, and so people won't die, they won't lose their assets, and in this case, not a disaster, it's just a earthquake that happened. I hope that is clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Another question, how can we ascertain that a flooding is not climate-induced?
I'm not sure I understand well the question, and I think we're gonna address climate change and disaster relation in the next session. So maybe your question will be better answered by the next speaker.
Okay. I think we have another question maybe for Nadia. From where would we know about the group working under CSF in our country, Pakistan?
Yes, thank you for the question. I believe Pakistan has endorsed the CSSF. Most likely the government, so it's integrated in the national policies, or will be integrated in the national policies. The best way to reach is to contact the respective government organization in your country that you believe would be focused on either school safety, Ministry of Education probably would be my best guess. Another way of understanding how the countries are working with it can also reach out to UNICEF and the country office and find out who would be, which department is working in this space in your country. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a question. I'm not sure whether you can respond to it, Nadia. Is there success stories for using AI and predictive models for early warning in schools for preparedness?
That's a great question. And so as you know, AI is relatively new, and I'm sure there are case studies that GADRRRES would receive soon, and we're hoping to receive that by the end of this year, where we know that AI has played a role in early warning systems. So far on our website, you will not find the AI case studies, but we're hoping to have that soon. So thank you for pointing that out. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We have more questions coming. I don't know if we should address them now or maybe move to the next session. What do you think, Justin?
I think we can start with the next session. I'll try to address the question I can in the chat box by answering directly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Over to you, David.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Let me just share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. So my name is David Meissner. I'm a consultant for UNDRR based in the regional office for Africa. And I'm going to be talking today about comprehensive disaster and climate risk management, CRM for short. So what is CRM all about? So CRM aims to strengthen synergies between disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. So we do this by identifying mutually beneficial opportunities across policies, programs, and we also do capacity building for governments for cross-sectorial planning. Now maybe let me give you some background on this and why it is important. So Justine alluded to this a little bit in the beginning, but we know that human-induced climate change is rapidly altering the risk profile of the planet, and that many disasters already bear the fingerprints of climate change. So climate change is not only increasing the magnitudes of these disasters, but also their frequency and severity. So they're happening more often with more impact, so to say. And these then, of course, fundamentally change the risk landscape. Quite a shocking statistic is that over the last 20 years, extreme weather events have doubled. Okay, so maybe now let's look at what actually brings the two concepts together. What are some of the common aims and the mutual benefits? So I've just put side by side the concepts and the definition again. Justine had talked about disaster risk reduction in the beginning, so maybe focus your attention to the right side on climate change adaptation. So it's the process of adjusting to the actual or expected climate and its effects, so as to moderate harm or even exploit beneficial opportunities. So climate change adaptation also includes the adjustment of natural systems to current or future climates and its effects, and the role of human intervention to facilitate it. And on the left, you would have done the DRR concept. Okay, I hope you guys can see this, but this is kind of comparing disaster risk management cycle and climate change adaptation cycle. So on the top, you would have disaster risk management, and at the bottom, the adaptation one. Now, I'd like you all to kind of bear with me for 2 or 3 minutes. And I want you to identify similarities. So what do you see at the top that is also reflected at the bottom? And once you have identified these, feel free to post them in the chat, and then maybe Justine can read out a few of your answers. So what are the commonalities between the disaster risk management cycle and the adaptation cycle? Don't worry, there's no wrong answers. Just have a look and start typing what you see. So what are the commonalities between the top and the bottom?
David, please, you can lower your voice, please, because your voice is very loud. So it should be good to increase the volume.
To increase the volume of my voice, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, so please find commonalities between the top and the bottom. What do you see in the DRM cycle that is also reflected in the adaptation cycle? And whatever you find, please post it into the chat. Thank you.
I see someone said risk assessment in common. Don't be shy. Have a look.
Excellent. Risk assessment. What else?
Capacity building.
Very good.
Strengthen
couple of
institutional capacity. Awareness raising. Risk
good.
information in both cycles. Advocacy.
Okay, thank you. These are all very good answers. And let me now reveal what some of them are. Yes, so both DRR and climate change adaptation have the following commonalities. So they both work to reduce vulnerability and exposure. They both do risk assessments. They both try to work to enhance capacities. And the overarching goal is to strengthen resilience. So building resilience of people, economies, and natural resources to the impacts of climate events is really the common ground between climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction efforts. Okay, so what does this then mean? How do we kind of take this in and go forward? So overall, actually, the potential for accelerating alignments between the concepts is significant. Both DRR and climate change adaptation are sufficiently flexible concepts to really enable countries to develop and implement strategies based on their natural circumstances and needs. So it's important to note that there's no one size fits all, but every strategy has to be adapted to the national context. So we often see that success results when coordination is supported by a strong lead institution with a mandate for coordinating disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation stakeholders. Now, unfortunately, this is not always the case, as most countries have different ministries or different institutions in charge for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, often being the Ministry of Environment for climate change adaptation and the Ministry of Interior for disaster risk reduction. So real coherence actually takes place only if these silos are broken and if the mechanisms for collaboration and partnerships are established, but also sustained. Okay, so what are some of the concrete actions that we can kind of use or implement to kickstart some of this alignment between the two concepts? So the first thing that we normally do is stock taking, right? So we identify what is the available information and governance instruments. And from there, we kind of see how best to develop common strategies that have a real coherence. Then we also look into what are the existent and relevant climate-centric risk assessments, such as climate change projections, hazards and exposure maps, and vulnerability and impact assessment. And based on this, also, I think someone in the chat asked if floods can always be related to climate change. This is some of the information that we would use to answer your question. So if the climate change predictions increase or project more rainfall, then indeed one of the logical explanations could be that we'll have floods more often. And then, of course, we also have to evaluate to what extent existing plans, strategies, and policies have already considered both disaster risk reduction, climate variability, and change within them. Well, excuse me. Now, the second action would be then to addressing capacity gaps. So first, we have to identify the key stakeholders and partners that are really essential to integrate climate information into DRR and vice versa. So this could be, for example, civil protection, it could be youth organizations, it could be various ministries, including, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture, but also donors and implementing partners. Then once we have identified common capacity gaps, We also then need to support them with capacity building measures, right? We check also what is already available within the institutions, within civil society, universities, but also the private sector. And then we would develop the actual capacities for national policy developments and implementation, with the idea that they would then ensure and promote coherence and synergies between climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, including also strengthening leadership and sharing of best practices. A big issue that we always face, so that we have seen in countries, is there is also an issue of addressing finance. Here also we can have a more coherent approach. So what we want to promote is to streamline disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation plans and strategies to also increase finance. So this includes through enabling integrated national financing frameworks, but also increased coordination between donors. And I mentioned the role of the private sector prior. They also play a key role here. We also try to support countries to develop and scale incentives for private sector investment to promote coherent and impactful engagement in implementing integrated disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Now, this is also a very critical one, is to improve coordination mechanisms. I mentioned before that often there's different lead organizations in countries working on climate change and disaster risk reduction. A key aspect of this is also developing coordinated data sets, with DRR and CCA information, so that we can really have a holistic approach into risk assessment. Now, we mentioned this is because often various actors have their own risk assessment, their own data sets, but sometimes there's a lack of finding a centralized platform or institution that kind of takes in all of this data and then analyzes it together. So the Ministry of Environment might have one, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry or the Meteorological Office, and the National Institution of Statistics all collect data. And the idea is, how do we kind of bring that together? We don't want to start from scratch, so we often start with identifying any existing or planned coordination mechanism to facilitate the integration and evaluation. So what we want to avoid is duplication, right? So we don't want new mechanisms to be put on top of existing ones, but rather use and build on what is already there. In case there isn't, we want to support the development of a coordination mechanism to enhance the understanding and communication of the cost benefits and priority issues that will kind of catalyze also the integration process. And another big one is monitoring and evaluating. So can we ensure that some of the indicators in the various projects or government interventions or from CSOs or from the private sector kind of align? So can we develop indicators that speak both to disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation actions that will then also put the top points with data? All right, looking at the time, let me go into some of the key takeaways that I want you to keep in mind when you hear of comprehensive risk management and the alignments between disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. So disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation have inherent synergies that should be reinforced when designing national disaster risk reduction strategies and national adaptation plans. So most countries either have them or are updating them. So when these processes are undertaken, we really try to ensure that the synergies are reinforced. So enhanced disaster risk reduction strategies and national adaptation plan coherence also offers unique implementation gains at country level. So this is something we want policymakers to really keep in mind also, and that when the actions are developed that accompanies these two plans, that also these are done in a coherent manner. Another big one is the alignment of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation processes will significantly improve countries' ability to reduce risk. Now, I alluded this prior, climate change is a huge factor in increasing risk. So kind of looking those or putting those together will really help countries to reduce the risk. And also something, this is what we hear back, unfortunately, sometimes from the climate change adaptation professionals, is that combining both processes does not actually jeopardize or divert climate resources from one to another, but actually maximizes the use of often limited resources. Now, in case you don't know, most of the money that is out there is actually spent or earmarked, let's say, more towards climate change and less to disaster risk reduction. But actually, there's lots of benefits to seeing and implementing those together as well. Now, let me leave with some conclusions. Harnessing DRR and CCA synergies is crucial for building resilient communities. Thus, it's in our hands as policymakers, practitioners, community members, youth as well, of course, to really advocate for advanced DRR and CCA coherence and disseminate the integrated approach to mitigate the impacts of climate-related risks and disasters. Now, I know there was a lot to take in a short period of time. Do please also have a look at our comprehensive risk management website here, where you will find lots of information, lots of tools also on how to take up some of that knowledge that I've just hopefully shared with you. And also there's a really interesting e-learning on comprehensive risk management. It takes about 2 hours to complete. It's also there on the DCRM website, so please do have a look. I think the presentations will also be shared after. You'll get a little bit more information for that as well. I've tried to condense it. Please do have a look, and thank you very much for your attention, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I think by now most of the participants will know the difference between the CSA and the DRR, but I think the questions will come later on the Q&A session. Now I think we can move to the youth education and DRR with IFRC, and we can maybe start with Percy, which will give us a background of the DRR activities in the region with the focus on school-based DRR. Percy, the floor is yours.
Asna, sorry,
Yes.
I think David has to leave quite soon, so maybe if there is a few questions on CCA and DR, we should take them now.
Sure.
I see there is 2 in the chat. I don't know if David, you can see them or not, or you want us to read them out loud.
There's quite a lot of activity in the chat, so if you know which one you would like, please go ahead and I'll do my best to answer.
There is a question, is CCA the same for every country and DR is different for every country? It depends on its geography, is it right?
Yes, geography is clearly a factor, but no, it is not the same for every country. This is why I was mentioning you always have to look at the context. I mean, even some countries are very big with very different climate spheres also. So even within the country, it's not always easy to have a clear understanding of what some of the risks are and what the best climate change adaptation measures are. Normally what happens is that countries have a national strategy, which kind of gives the overarching principles and a national risk assessment. So they'll see, okay, within our country, what are some of the biggest risks that we face? And then they kind of break it down to the various regions. So the idea is actually the opposite. We don't want to go to one size fits all, but really always adapt this to the national or even sub-national context, depending on what information is out there.
Thank you, David. There is another question asking if DRR and CCA, is it better for them to be merged into one institution that handles them both, or is it good to keep them separate?
So from us, we would actually very much welcome that they would be merged. because this is exactly part of the issue that we're trying to bridge, right? When I was talking about breaking silos, look, various ministries have various budgets and various ambitions that not necessarily always align, even though the potential to reduce risk and the synergies are there. So in an ideal case, yes, this is something that we would welcome, to have one ministry or one lead organization working on climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. If this is not possible, we would at least welcome to have one plan that kind of touches both. And if that is not possible, to ensure at least that there are functioning coordination mechanisms where you can ensure that all actors involved in climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction meet, share data, share what they're doing, to then really implement this in a most synergetic and coherent manner.
Thank you very much, David. Maybe there is someone asking about the Sahel countries. Do you have a specific example from there, or resources you could indicate on this topic?
So we have on the UNDRR.org/CRM some case studies and some tools. I don't think we have specific examples for Sahel, but clearly Sahel is very much impacted by climate change. What is also interesting with Sahel region is there's another layer that comes on top of this, which is also conflict and fragility, right? Which is also a risk driver. So we have some very good technical guidance on, for example, how to integrate disaster risk and climate change information into strategies. Lots of countries are now also in the Sahel region are updating or developing their national adaptation plans. So how to integrate disaster risk reduction concepts into national adaptation plans. Currently, they're available in English, and now I know most of the Sahel region is French speaking. We're looking into having those translated. Yeah, but do have a look. We have quite a few tools that we are developing on comprehensive risk management, now also nature-based solutions. And yeah, we're continuing to add to those. But to the best of my knowledge, no, we don't have something specific at this stage for the Sahel.
Thank you very much, David. I think we have to stop there and to move to the next session. Thank you for your participation. Asta, I give you back the moderating. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, David. Now we can move to Percy, which will give us a background of IFRC DRR activities in the region. The floor is yours. Percy, are you here? Do you hear us?
Okay, good morning, everyone. I trust you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I think my microphone was messed up. Good to be with you all, and it's a morning in Nigeria, so good morning, everyone. Permit me also to quickly share my screen so we run through very quickly. Just a couple of slides, not to speak so much, but to lay the foundation for what my colleagues would also be speaking to as to our engagement and activity within the African region, structured also the way it has been laid out in the agenda. But to begin with, my name is Percy, and I currently chair the African Region Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change Adaptation Community of Practice within the African region. For this presentation, I would also be joined by my other colleagues. Amin is the IFRC African Youth Network President and also doubles as the National Youth Chairman for the Nigerian Red Cross Society. Would also meet with Peter Murgo. Peter Murgo is also another of our colleagues working with the Kenyan Red Cross, currently as a DRR and cash manager. And finally, experiences will be shared from the Mauritius Red Cross, where Navin, who is the head of programs and DMDRR manager, would also be speaking to us. Away with the introduction, the African region of the IFRC covers 49 national societies, and these 49 national societies engaging in different forms of disaster risk reduction activities and other humanitarian activities are supported by the IFRC Regional Office based in Nairobi, as well as a couple of country delegations and multi-country delegations, what we call the cluster delegation offices. Away from the Sendai framework that guides all that we do, the IFRC have also got what we call the Strategy 2030, which aims to achieve 3 goals. But for these 3 goals to be achieved, would basically need to tackle 5 challenges, which centers around the climate and environment crisis, the environmental crisis and disaster, the growing gaps that is occurring in health and well-being, migration and identity, as well as values, power, and inclusion. And all of this has got 7 transformations that within the Red Cross Red Crescent movement of the African region and globally, we will need to undergo to be able to tackle these challenges. But when it comes to youth, DRR, and climate action, the IFRC have also got a very bold commitment, a very, very bold commitment. And this has been like part of the guiding principles for us in the community of practice. And these commitments are from all of our strategic documents and global strategic alignments leading into the Red Cross Red Crescent strategy on youth-led climate action, where we have realized the great role that young people have got to play when it comes to disaster risk reduction and climate action. And here we are looking at our volunteering base, largely made up of young people. More than half of our volunteering base is within the categories of the young people, and we wish to tap into this very mighty strength that we've got to be able to address climate change as well as all of our DRR activities. Now, there are 3 dimensions to this strategy, which is awareness, action, and then advocacy. And all of this is centered again around the young people. And at this point, I think I need to also specially commend the UNDRR, the SCM, and then the AYAB for putting together this engagement and also for having us on board. There are a couple of tools within the Red Cross movement that we use for youth engagement, and colleagues will be sharing experiences on them. One of these tools is called the YADAPT, which is Youth Action on Developing Adaptation Plans for Tomorrow. This is a very effective tool that national societies within the region had been engaging, and we would hear experiences from the Kenyan Red Cross as well as the Mauritius Red Cross around their activities on youth engagement. We also have the PASA Youth, which is a participatory approach for safe shelter awareness, a youth engagement tool also within the Red Cross movement that have been quite effective, and we have been engaging that. Currently, we are using the PASA Youth for a collaborative effort in Nigeria and in Mali, targeting the greening of schools and also safe shelters within schools. And this we are doing in partnership with the Norwegian Refugee Council. Again, in Zimbabwe and across different national societies in Africa, we are on having activities around comprehensive school safety model, which was present in Sudan. The Sudanese Red Cross is also having this youth targeted DRR project that is targeting children between the age range of 7 to 14. And all of these and so many more are activities from different national societies that we are engaged in. But just to round up and then bring up the next speaker, for the African region DRR CCA community of practice, we decided to also give ourselves some focused areas to guide our activities within the African region. And first of the focus area is for the Red Cross Red Crescent to have the capacity to deliver on climate actions. So this drives us into ensuring that, within the chat box, I've seen a lot on strengthening of capacities of stakeholders. And so we are focusing on not just the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement within the region, but also relevant stakeholders to ensure that there is sufficient capacity to deliver on climate action. And the second focused area will be around DRR and CCA policies and advocacies within the region. And here I see also a lot of area of collaboration and partnership, even with other stakeholders, on how we can further policies and advocacies around DRR and CCA. And then the safe and resilient communities. And the last pillar or areas will be around environmental sustainability. So this in brief is just the foundation of all that we are doing within the region and many more, which time would not allow me to speak to at this point. But permit me now to bring up the African Youth Network President, Mr. Amin Abdul, who would also further speak on the role of youth and what the youth also have as their ambition within the region. Amin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Percy. I want to confirm if everybody can hear me before I continue.
Yes, we can, Amin.
Okay, thank you. So it's my pleasure to be taking part in this wonderful celebration with everybody here. And, you know, it's always our pleasure as young people to work with organizations in ensuring a better world for everybody. So I'd like to start by highlighting some of the efforts that has been made by the young people of the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement in Africa, as well as some of our commitments. So I'll start by letting you know that the IFRC Africa Youth Network is currently mobilizing over 100,000 young volunteers across 48 national societies. In the Red Cross Red Crescent movement, we call our movements, we call our societies in each country, we call them national societies. So we've been mobilizing them to lead initiatives focused on disaster risk reduction, climate action, and community resilience. And these efforts align with the IFRC Youth Climate Strategy. And the Youth Climate Strategy prioritizes youth leadership in climate adaptation and mitigation. So the role of education in driving this change is very vital. And secondly, one of the key commitments we made during the 10th Pan-African Conference that we had last year in Nairobi, Kenya, is to plant and care for 70% of IFRC's global target of 5 billion trees by 2025. And this initiative will be carried out through a network of 1,000 branches, 10,000 school clubs, and 100 tertiary institutions, aiming to create 100 green youth businesses. And this initiative also directly supports IFRC's climate goals by enhancing ecosystems. It also reduces disaster risks, and it contributes to long-term climate resilience. So the IFRC Africa Youth Climate Strategy also emphasizes the importance of localized community-based approaches to disaster risk reduction. And one of such efforts is the establishment of 15 food banks in 15 national societies. And these 15 food banks is aimed at engaging 15,000 youth volunteers. And these food banks will in partnership with 15 tertiary institutions, as well as hotels, supermarkets, and food production companies, tackle food insecurity exacerbated by climate change in Africa. Our youth network continues to champion the IFRC's Why Adapt Climate curriculum. And our Why Adapt Climate curriculum is an education tool that empowers young people in our region to understand climate change and take action within their communities. As we all know, Why Adapt integrates disaster risk reduction and adaptation strategies through game-based peer-to-peer learning, fostering resilience in face of both rapid and slow onset climate events. Another addition to some of our commitments and efforts is that the IFRC climate strategy underscores the catch them young, as we may say, as we may call it, the catch them young principle that promotes early engagement of young people in climate and disaster education through education and hands-on learning. And we aim to create a generation of young leaders. This is very important to us because we are young people, and we want to have a generation that prepares the floor for the coming generation. So it's aimed at creating a generation of young leaders that are not only informed, but equipped to drive sustainable and disaster resilience solutions across their communities. And we as a youth network have dedicated to building a disaster resilient future by leveraging the power of education and partnerships to protect and empower our teeming young people through our ongoing efforts in tree planting, food security, and climate adaptation. We reflect our commitment to global disaster risk reduction and climate action goals. And it's important to us, and we are very happy to have been invited to this very important engagement. And with the above said, I'd want to say that to everybody, to every young person here, I'd want to say that the future of disaster risk reduction is in our hands. And I would like to implore us to seize this moment and own this space as young people. Let us see how we can shape a future where young people are at the forefront of creating positive change. To all the young people who are here on this call today, and to those who will be watching after, I would like to tell us that we are the ones we've been waiting for. Let's make it happen, guys. And I'd like to thank the UNDRR for having me here today. Thank you, Percy, and thank you, everybody, for making this happen.
All right, thank you so much, Amin. And with the future of disaster risk reduction in the hands of the youth, permit me to bring up very quickly Peter Murgo. Murgo would be sharing the Kenyan Red Cross experience with us. On to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Percy. Just checking that you can all hear me.
Yes, very loud and clear. And let me know if I need to stop sharing my screen.
Please do, so that I can share from my end.
Yeah, all right, Peter, all is set for you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, just a moment. I'm trying to share my screen. Confirm you can see my screen?
Yeah, very clearly.
All right, thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to share our experiences. Since it's a progressive kind of sharing, I will avoid going back to what grounds have already been shared, and just in the interest of time, go right directly to do what the assignment is, and that is to share the experiences of Kenya Red Cross, particularly when we are talking about youth from the lens of the work we're doing with IFRC and the national societies, is just to talk a bit of the work we're doing around school-based disaster risk reduction, where we are working with learning institutions to do integration of DRR and climate change adaptation in the education curriculum. Also, capacity building staff and students on first aid, emergency response, and disaster preparedness, and then developing and implementing school-based disaster management plans. We cannot talk about that without talking, and I had one of the speakers talking about how resilient the infrastructure within learning facilities are. And that includes looking at the learning facilities, how adaptive are they to any shocks, fires, and all those kind of things. Kenya is one of the places where, I don't know if a number of you might have seen or watched in the news, where we had several incidences of fires affecting and burning dormitories, for example, and some unfortunate incidences where there were loss of lives and even properties damaged. So the need to look at how resilient this infrastructure and community and stakeholders engagement, so that there is a holistic approach to disaster risk reduction with the aim of protecting lives and making sure that we do not disrupt education due to emergencies. So from our perspective, with that, is that we focused on some specific programs when we were looking at school-based disaster risk reduction, and that was mainly around fire safety, safe water rescue, road safety, and with relevance to this conversation, mostly climate literacy and mental health and psychosocial support, because the mental well-being of learners is critical. If they're distressed, if they are not mentally stable, that affects their capacity to learn and could lead even to some of the negative impacts that can create havoc or disasters within the learning institutions. So, and then if you go to the why adapt, I'm incorporating both, and then I can talk about the lessons that we have drawn just to deliver and to share time with my counterparts. I know my predecessor, the speaker who spoke before me, and Percy also gave a background of the why adapt approach, which is a curriculum developed under the IFRC, a toolkit designed also by the RCRC Climate Center, just to help us to be able to engage youth and come up with plans, with strategies, looking into their lifestyles. How do they cope? How do they live? How best can we communicate with them using the approaches that relate with them, without making it look like we've taken back them into a classroom to learn. We want to bring them outside the classroom, but engage them with activities that that can make it possible for them to be able to learn. The game-based approach, particularly, so that we can inspire them, develop and implement climate change initiatives that can also help to advocate within the communities. Some of the activities that happened within Kenya along the same lines is that we implemented a program. One of them was Valuing Water Youth Journey Project, which was supported by the Red Cross, Red Crescent Climate Center and the British Red Cross. And some of the key activities were trainer of trainees, training for 20 youth leaders across the 8 counties. So Kenya is divided geographically into 8 counties. And then facilitating training for 82 young youth climate champions in the 8 counties, and then support for local actions through micro grants for 7 counties, and then a national youth conference engaging 102 youth leaders in 47 counties. This is just a summarized version in the interest of time, because there may not be much to be said. So, and just to inform that even currently there's a work plan that has been developed by the youth team to just cascade and to expand into 3 other counties, picking up from the year 2023, so that we cascade and leverage the learnings that we've done out of this. Our successes, if we may talk about it, is the rehabilitation of River Turkwell. It is very inspiring to see the impact youth had in one of the worst affected drought-stricken areas of the country. And so this being an arid and semi-arid county, it hosts the Turkwell River. And I don't know if many of you who might have done history or geography, Turkwell River is one of the hydro-generating rivers because of the velocity of the river and the water banks it has. So the issue is, because of climate change, the water levels have been reducing, and the ecosystem, because of environmental degradation, was beginning to thin out with erosion and all those negative impacts. So there was the need to plant trees. There was the need to try and contain and conserve the environment, reforest, and to try and manage the ecosystem. So youth champions planted 100 seedlings, and these were fruit tree seedlings around the banks. It is very inspiring to see the significant impact that has within a short time. Interesting to notice those lands are very fertile. So what we are beginning to witness is the impact of extreme weather events around those areas, and then seeking to address the issues of drought and then floods for people who are living around there. Most of us who have done agronomy and around risk reduction, you will know when we plant such trees that have, they are able to conserve and to preserve, to protect against soil erosion or degradation, and these are the benefits. So this is one of our successes that was done through the youth program, And then again, there was the greenhouse activity in Bomet, which was established in October 2023. And this was designed by the youth as a resource stream, but also looking at generating seedlings. So this is the point. As Kenya Red Cross, when we were looking at initiatives to do the greening urban cities, the tree and care initiatives, one of the things we were thinking about is the source of having seedlings and particular tree varieties. So we said, why not do our own, our own tree nurseries? And the youth have been able to do this incubation of seedlings before transferring them to the community and local gardens. And this was hybrid watermelons, kales, cabbages, sweet pepper. And there's also been indigenous trees and the fast growing trees for community members to be used as fuel. So the achievement is so far 1,600 seedlings of tomatoes, 300 seedlings of watermelon, and 10 volunteers having been absorbed to be able to take that. Of course, a learning from this was now the challenge that comes is technical expertise within them, but we have worked around to make sure that we are now bridging that gap and providing the necessary technical expertise for the youth to be able to achieve this. Key learnings, if I may summarize in the interest of time, is that the schools provide an integral platform to shape lifelong champions, which is being ingrained in their system. You don't forget what you learn in school. What you are taught when you're in junior becomes your lifestyle. And then the other learning we get is that integrating climate change adaptation and DRR in the national curriculum contributes to significantly, sustainably reducing risks. So this is something, once you've invested, it is something that you cannot wish away. Something else that we are learning is that youth are pivotal and great ambassadors of DRR. Wherever the youth are, the energy with which they have, when they've been capacity built and provided with the right information, they become good ambassadors. They advocate. They are the ones who will want to ensure that waste is properly managed, environment is properly conserved, there is no degradation and all those. Also in the Y Adapt curriculum, we learned that games and informal interactive sessions provide a great platform to learn and to inculcate information into the youth so that at least they are able to have this information in them and to share out. And then finally, that the learning ecosystem is a critical component for the success of school-based DRR and the Y Adapt. What do we mean? Whether it is universities, whether it is the vocational institutions, whether it is the primary and lower level learning institutions, whoever is engaged, whether it is the Ministry of Education, the teachers, the staff themselves, everyone in that ecosystem, they're an integral component in making sure that the success of these interventions are essential. I think I will just leave it here in a nutshell as some of the learnings that we have drawn from the Kenya experience. And I give it back to you, Percy.
All right, thank you so much, Peter. I think the experiences are worth just going over and over, but for the sake of time, I would quickly run to the island of Mauritius to also see the great works that have been done and is still being done in the National Society there. And if Navin is on the call, I would hand over to Navin to take up from there. Navin, over to you, and let's try to round up in the time we have. Thank you.
Yes, Percy, thank you. Thank you, Percy. And would you be able to share the presentation so that I can easily continue to share the experiences?
Sure. I'll do just that.
So thank you, Percy, and thank you, colleagues, for inviting us in Mauritius Red Cross to share experience. My PowerPoint presentations is in French, but I try to manage in English so that most of you could understand. I have been listening to my predecessors on different aspects, and for example, whether DRR differs from country to country, and also how do we do that? And I'm very glad that Percy asked us to participate in this meeting so that we could also share what we do in the islands, because though we form part from in Africa, but we are small islands within the Indian Oceans with different vulnerabilities and also hazards that faces to us. And I will share my experience, especially on how we have been using different tools so that we can educate, we can sensitize the young generation, the youth, and the children. And this is how we managed to develop also many educational tools also, so that we are still using in schools. So it all started in 2015, that is post of the disastrous flash flood what we had in 2013, where we had many people that died, unfortunately, with the sudden rise of water. And this is in 2013 that we started to have this new phenomenon of flash flooding. So we decided to start with a community survey. And unfortunately, when the result came back, we understood that the culture of risk within the youth, within the young generation, were erased. And this is why the program that we have started in 2015 is named Jeunesse Prend Compte, which is in Creole, Mauritian Creole, youth take care, because we need to make the youth reflect on that the more you are aware on the hazard, the lesser you will be impacted. So the overall objective of this program is to promote, especially within the youth, the culture of risk, and also to educate the beneficiaries, especially the youth of the islands, because Mauritius is also comprised of different islands like Rodrigues, Agaliga, etc. So in the year 2015, we thought that we could educate, sensitize the youth or the young children with only one tool. And unfortunately, it was not a success. And this is when, in 2015, we brought back together all partners, especially the French Red Cross Pirois and the other federation and all other stakeholders, even government stakeholders, to see what was going wrong. And what we managed to make out from this reflection, that we need to have different tools for different audiences. This is why we don't educate or use our tools in only formal schools, but we use it in informal schools. That is, we also use it in communities where the youth, where the children regroup themselves. The first one that I want to present to you is a booklet which is now being used by the Ministry of Education as a reference booklet. It is in French and English, where it highlights all the hazards that Mauritius, the Republic of Mauritius faces, and how we could better understand them and what would be that we should do before, during, and after. So this is a tool that is much more structured, because it is being used in complementary with the school manuals, and we target with this tool the children from 8 to 11 within the formal education system. The next one is, Percy, if you can move the slide. The next one is when we were reflecting in communities, we could not use the same tool which is being used in the schools, because when the young people and the children were meeting in the community halls, in the community centers, they were looking for other things, such as games, etc. So we managed to develop or to recreate this famous game, which is Snake and Ladders, and we transform them into Hazard and Ladders. And this, we can say, pedagogic game ensures that when they are playing, they are also understanding the hazard, and so that they can increase their resilience within the community and also share within the others, within the other children, what they should do before, during, and after the disaster. Next one. And we have also developed for younger children, because we have understood that in kindergartens, that the kids that we were developing for the primary school or the community level people, that the tools were not the same. So we had another reflection with specialists and also volunteers, and we brought back what we were seeing that was going to disappear, that is storytelling. And storytelling, which I have been able to have it with my grandparents, and we were seeing that in the modern Mauritius, that this was going out. So we managed to develop a story book, which is called L'Île aux Mille Dangers, which is the island with all its disasters. And we started to use that either by training the teachers, or our volunteers were going directly to the schools and using this story so that we can, again, increase the knowledge, increase the resilience of the community members. But then when we reflected again after some years, we brought some young people from the National Society and also community. And we have seen that now technology was coming out. So the next tool that we have developed is what we call the virtual reality, Percy. So we are now using virtual reality in events, in public events, in schools, or even in public gathering, so that we can use this tool to educate the young, and especially they were eager because technology is now what we call in French the maître mot de toute la situation. So we are now using virtual reality, and this game consists is in two phases. The first one, next slide, Percy. The first phase is, how do you prepare a kit when you need to leave your home in case of flooding, in case of cyclones, or in any emergency. So you are guided by this avatar that you can see on the screen, and now and you prepare your kit before you move out of your home. And the second sequence of the game is, unfortunately, you are stuck in your home, and it's raining, and there is a cyclone, or there is a torrential rain, and it's your community is being flooded, and you need to move out. So what are the steps that you need to do, like cut the gas, electricity, take out your pet, etc., so that before going out of your home, that you have secured your home and also secured all your personal belongings before you go. So this is how I can, in this short time that was allocated, to say that, unfortunately, in each country, the hazards are different. The capacity of the community members are different, but we at the Red Cross, we ensure ourselves that we are working towards increasing the resilience of the community members, and especially within the youth, because it is considered that the youth, the children, the young generation would be the ambassadors of the future, so that we can ensure that we have increased the culture of risk. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Navin, and thank you to all the colleagues that have contributed to this conversation from the IFRC. We want to hand over back now to the organizers, and apologies if we went beyond the allotted time to us. Thank you, and over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Percy, for your presentation. I think we will pace because the time is go. So we'll pace to Terry Otieno, which can give us the presentation of arts and DRR. Terry, you're welcome.
Hello. Thank you all for staying with us for now what, 1 hour, 45 minutes, close to 2 hours. We are very, very much grateful for this. So I know when we were making the announcement for a lot of you who saw my LinkedIn page, and we announced that we will follow up with a DRR art competition. And so that's what I want to discuss right now, just to give a short overview of the art competition, and of course to allow us to have a bit of Q&A regarding the art competition, and for us to know that we will be launching the art competition tomorrow on Friday, the 30th of August. So now this webinar was very short and allowed our speakers to give comprehensive brief details on key DRR concepts. So that was the aim, such that when we go and launch the competition and you want to take part in the competition, you take part in it with the correct or renewed knowledge on what DRR is. So with that in mind, the art competition will be launched tomorrow. Again, I've already said that, and it will run for 2 weeks. And so how you're going to get access to this information for all of us who registered to attend this webinar, one of it will be through the email. So we are going to send you an email tomorrow announcing that the DRR art competition is launched and giving you instructions in the email. Some of the instructions you will get include the form. There will be a Microsoft form, almost a similar form as the one you filled in order to attend this art. There will be such a link that you'll need to fill. The questions in that form will include your name, of course, your region, the type of art you'll be submitting, and I'm getting into the type of arts that are admissible in a couple of minutes from now, and then what your thoughts about it, what material you used to create it, and what message you are passing through it. And so the art competition will be submitted through that Microsoft form. And so what type of art will we be requesting you to submit? Now, when we say art, it can be an ambiguous term, like what do we mean by art, really, right? So we have a couple of them, and I think the medium will be, you can be a picture or a video. And if it's a video, it will be, you are allowed to record a 3-minute video. So there are different ways in which you can end up submitting this video. You can, of course, record yourself explaining a concept, but then we don't really need you alone, because then you will not be the art, right? So what you do is you can explain, like, once you are speaking, if you want to speak, that is, you make sure you embed videos or pictures or the image. Say you've sat down and drawn an image, and so you want to explain it. If you do not want to type in word form only, you can get into the video and say, hey, this is my name, this is the art that I am submitting, and this is it. Then you show it, and then you explain parts of that image in the video, and it should not be more than 3 minutes. At the same time, you can submit the picture itself without putting it in a video and describe in the form. And so what we need to understand is, if you're creating a video, you will have to upload it, say, in your Google Drive, and then share with us the link. Or you can upload it in on say, a platform like YouTube. I'm thinking of TransferWise, but then I'm thinking that will mean it will have an expiration date, because TransferWise always goes with the 3 days. So let's use a site that is does not have an expiration date like YouTube. And if you use your Google Drive, then you make sure that you have given us editor access so we can view it and download it when needed, right? So that's it. And so I've mentioned the period that the art competition ran for 2 weeks. I've mentioned the mode of submission. I've mentioned that we have the background from this DRR training. What else have I not mentioned? Maybe to emphasize the type of art we are supposed to submit. Apart from the video and the pictures, you can also submit a poem or a spoken word or a song, anything artistic, literally, you can submit it if you're not restricting it. So those are the types of the forms in which you can submit the art. Just make sure whatever it is you choose, you relate it to DRR and much more to the IDDRR 2024 theme, which is resilience through education. So if that's what you need to focus on, it's very important to make sure you link your art to DRR concepts or the IDDRR theme. And then apart from that is you can use any language to submit your art. So if you're comfortable doing it in French, it's okay in Spanish, it's okay in English or Swahili, like you are allowed to present your art in any form. However, because of language barrier and the limited time we have, we will request you to make sure that when you use any other language other than French and English, to make sure you include that transcription that is telling us, look, or if you do it in a video, you include a caption where you're now translating whatever it is you're saying in that language into English or French to make it easier for the panelists. And just to announce that this competition is extremely important and taken seriously to the point where we will allow external people who are known and in the art world and have experience and knowledge and are, like credible to be the ones that will be judging these competition submissions. So whenever it is the winner will be announced, it will be because they have been looked at with like neutral people. So it's not, I know like someone like me, you see me on LinkedIn, I post a lot and you'll think, oh, because I posted about the competition or you've seen the speakers here, like these speakers are the ones that are going to choose. And so if I talk to them, it might help. No, it will not help. We are just here to give guidance and to say that the competition will be fair and credible and that the winner will be selected by credible, neutral individuals who are well known in the world of art. And so I think the other thing, of course, the art competition is open to anyone within the national societies, in Red Cross, within all the partners that have spoken, within your friends who are interested in expressing themselves in art way through what DRR is and all. So the art competition is not restricted to you who registered here only. And so of course, because we know we need to disseminate it further, we're going to make additional outreach. We will still make posts on our individual LinkedIn pages, on the organization LinkedIn pages. So you can follow UNDRR on LinkedIn. You can follow UNDRR Africa on X, formerly Twitter. You can follow, I post a lot on LinkedIn, I'm sure you know that, but I go by my name. Like literally, we are going to make sure that we post this art competition across all the social media pages and handles that you saw the DRR webinar posted on. So yeah, that is going to be the case. And of course, just to remind us that there will be one winner who is between 18 and 35 years old that will be selected from the art competition and represent us in the upcoming regional platform in Namibia in October. So I see we have 4 minutes to the close of the hour and can take 1 or 2 questions related to the competition. that I have just discussed, if we have any.
Yes. If there are questions for Terry, so under the question of Terry, if there are people who have the question of Red Cross, because I see in here in the question, there are people who say if it's possible to share the presentation, all presentation of the session. So for many people who present, I don't know if there are possible to send your presentation for our participants if possible.
All right, so we'll discuss internally, but we believe it's possible to share, especially the first presentation that speaks on or highlights the key DRR concept notes. So expect our emails with whatever it is we can share. All right, so if there's no question, I'll hand back over to the moderator, Hasna. Thank you.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. Yes, thank you so much, Terry. I will give the floor to John maybe to wrap up if there are no more questions.
Yes, thank you, Asna. So I see here the question. So if people, this is question of UNDRR. So the people say if any UNDRR in Kenya, I would like to be part of the team. So that is the, I don't know if it's the question or is the.
Sorry, John, I think there are two questions for Terry. Please share with us the competition questions in written form. And the second question is, are there specific guidance for submissions using a video entry?
If I may come in,
Yes,
Terry.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you
Good.
very much, Asna, and thank you, everyone. We will share more detailed instructions about the submission tomorrow when we officially open the art competition. If you have more questions after we submit this, we will find a way to get your question. But yeah, you will have more guidance. I think we are running out of time, so I propose we just wrap it up. Thank you very much for all the speakers and presenters who share their expertise today with us. We'll make this presentation available on YouTube of the UNDRR YouTube. Thank you very much to all the people who attended. You were more than 80 people here, and we are really glad for you to have attended this event. Thank you very much, and we're going to close this session now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.